Hello, everyone again. My name is Dhaval again. So let's get started with today's webinar. So today's webinar will be introducing our QTS and QTS Hero 5.2 firmware. This introduces a lot of security features such as the new security center that automatically protects your NAS from ransomware protection. We also have the new security features like new SEE drives with TCG-Ruby, as well as some new performance improvements with the SMB Multi Channel. And we can also look into the Windows and PC server backup as well with the new Hyper Data Protector, which was introduced some time ago, but we just want to reintroduce again with this particular webinar. Dan is going to take away from here for the presentation, and we can then get started with the demo as well after that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Daniel Francis Lyon. I'm the technical sales lead here. And so there's a number of new things in version 5.2 that I think are very much worth talking about. And so part of it is security, extra protection against ransomware, how we can monitor for unusual activity and automatically put your folder in read-only mode to protect it, or automatically set a snapshot up to you, and I'll go more into detail on that. And yeah, supporting TCG-Ruby for self-encrypting drives. We've supported self-encrypting drives in the past, but we now support Rubies, which means we can support more self-encrypting drives, more options there. And then there's some really great performance improvements and some other things like how long it takes to restart a NAS. We're able to boot up almost twice as fast now. I know a number of customers have been expressing their desire for us to have faster startup times, and now we have faster startup times. So first of all, I want to get into performance. So we have an SMB kernel mode. Now you might have noticed we've had kernel mode for a little while. So it's not that kernel mode is just introduced in 5.2, but in each version we improve kernel mode, improve the performance of kernel mode, deal with potential issues with kernel mode. And at this point, kernel mode is working pretty well, and we're at a point now that I want to make a bigger deal out of kernel mode because of how well it's working. So if you look at these numbers here, without kernel mode versus with kernel mode, we're getting more than double the read throughput here, and still a significant boost in write throughput. So this is at a point where it's time to make a big deal out of this. Kernel mode has been improving, and it's really gotten quite good. And for IOPS, we're getting around 5 times the IOPS. So I figured now's a good time. Let's go more into detail what kernel mode is. And let's advertise this more because it's getting quite good. So essentially what kernel mode is it allows you to more directly access the hardware without the need for system calls. So to understand the difference, imagine if you don't have kernel mode. When an application runs in user mode, if the application has to access hardware resources, it has to do a system call, which then brings it to kernel mode, accesses the resources, then goes back to user mode. The reason why this could be a problem for SMB, if you only run it in user mode, imagine if you want to read like 1,000 small files. Like, this is actually reasonably common. Some people deal with like large files, but some people have a folder with many small files they need to read quickly. And imagine if you have to read like 1,000 files. So you're in user mode, you do a system call, go to kernel mode, read the file, go back to user mode, go do a system call, go to kernel mode, read the file, go back to user mode, then system call, like all these system calls, all these switching between modes, adds a lot of extra steps for reading files, writing files, and it really hurts on the IOPS. So I think you can see in the performance, the read throughput was like double, but the IOPS were like 5 times the IOPS. Like all these switching back and forth between modes can really lower the IOPS. But with kernel mode, you could just stay in kernel mode. You don't have to keep going back to user mode, all this back and forth. So the IOPS can be a lot better with kernel mode. Also, it's just better parallel processing. Like one of the issues with the SMB protocol is usually the SMB protocol is single threaded. So what that would mean is, let's say you have an all flash like 1090 FU with a 16 core epic. That sounds amazing. But then let's say you have just one user accessing the storage through SMB, just one user at a time. Usually the SMB protocol is single threaded, so that even though you get that 16-core CPU, you might only be using one CPU core to that one user. And we're hitting some CPU bottlenecks when you're only using one of your 16 CPU cores. Now that's the normal problem of SMB, but actually with kernel mode, we have better parallel processing where if you wanted to say a single user wants to read like 1,000 files, you could actually split that up into multiple threads. And so each file could be a thread. In fact, if you're reading and writing at the same time, that can be split up into individual threads. So we can now split up these things into many more threads to now use all of your CPU cores instead of just one of them. Much better parallel processing there. But also, even when multiple people are accessing the NAS simultaneously, it just parallel processes better. So these are the two main things, is not having to switch back and forth between user mode and kernel mode, not having to do all these system calls for better IOPS, but also much better parallel processing to use like all of your CPU cores, and where usually the SMB protocol would be just single threaded. So this can allow for quite a bit better performance. And I'm really excited about this. Of course, this especially makes a big difference on all flash storage because SSDs can be so fast. And therefore, often the limiting factor of performance is how efficiently can we read and write to those SSDs. And this can allow it to be a lot more efficient and much more effectively use your CPU cores. And this, of course, would help with SMB Multi Channel as well, because when you have better parallel processing, you can, in parallel, with Multi Channel, you now have parallel access to that folder since you're going through multiple ports. So this can also increase the efficiency of parallel processing through multi-channel. So a lot I can say about this. This should be a big boost in performance for some people. So the other big thing about 5.2, which I think is really cool, is the better protection against ransomware. So we've had Security Counselor for a while. But what we have now is you can use AI to monitor what is normal activity for your folder. And on a folder by folder basis, you can decide what you want to do if you have an unusual amount of file modification. Like if someone unusually goes in and starts deleting all your files, someone unusually goes in and starts writing to all your files, modifying your files, encrypting your files. It can use AI to recognize what is usual file activity. Then you set a threshold, either medium or high threshold, for what is unusual file modification. And when you get unusual file modification, you can set it to take a snapshot. And you can have that be the only thing it does, if that's all you want to do. But you can also set it to disable future snapshots so that you don't have a problem of future snapshots taken after your files are encrypted, taking up space. You can also set the folder to read-only mode so that things cannot be modified anymore. So it's up to you what you want to set, but these are the options you have. And so here's just a picture of some of the options. So you can see with each folder, like I have the Zilio folder, public folder, multimedia folder. You can choose number of changes for a high threshold or a number of changes for a medium threshold. And then what do you want to do? Do you want to disable scheduled snapshots, take a new snapshot, or set the folder to read-only mode? And this is set by folder basis. So maybe there's some folders where you realize you might do lots of modifications. You're not regular. Maybe you don't want to set this feature for that folder, but on a folder basis, you can decide what you want to do. Or maybe at all folders, you want the feature enabled, but on some folders, you might want to just take a snapshot, but other folders, if that real unusual file modification happens, set it to read-only mode. So this should be excellent protection against ransomware. So, to really just go into more how this works, NAS monitors file activity. So you use your NAS and monitors your file activity to figure out how many files do you typically modify in a given day. Just get normal activity, get like a baseline. And then as soon as it detects unusual activity, It can put the share folder in some kind of protection mode, like read-only mode, or take a snapshot, up to you. But you can also set a notification emails as well, or get messages on your phone to notify of the unusual activity.
Yeah, so in this way, you can automate your ransomware protection. So usually when, before, what happens is that if there is any attack to your NAS and you don't have this particular feature enabled, the hacker just keeps locking up your files, right? So they just access the device, they just access the shared folder, and they just keep locking file after file after file, unless you manually intervene by unplugging your NAS or anything like that. But with this new feature, you can automate everything. So you don't have to worry about if you're not being there, or you're not being or not knowing what's happening. Because what happens is that with the new security center, the QNAS will establish a baseline, right? It will keep checking how much you use each folders on your device. So for example, it's just a very rough example. So every time you access a device for like your personal folder, right? You modify you add new data, you modify new data, or you do certain amount of clicks on that particular folder 100 times per day. So it will establish a baseline. So first, I think the first week, it will establish a baseline of what's your usage of that shared folder would be. Once it establishes a baseline, it will know that this is your usual activity. But whenever there's an attack, and then the NAS starts encrypting the files, or the hacker starts encrypting the file, that the file access shoots up exponentially compared to your baseline. So the NAS knows this time there is something wrong with the device, and instead of waiting for you to intervene, it will actually, and you can set this up, right? You can actually ask the QNAP to just put it in read-only mode. So as soon as it goes in read-only mode, the new files that are inside that particular folder would not get encrypted. There may be some files that may get encrypted because it needs to know, but as soon as it detects that the files are unusual, like there's an unusual activity, the QNAP will automatically put that into a read-only mode. So your new all the rest of the files will not get encrypted, and then you can come and then you'll get a notification on your NAS, right, or via email or like Q Manager application on your phone if you have those set up. And then you will get notified saying that no, there is unusual file activity happening and NAS took an action. So now you don't have to worry about not being there. You can just when you're available, you can come back to your NAS, log into it. You can check for your usual activity to see if there's really a threat, or it was just something that an application just started to write a lot of files, and then it was just something that the NAS just should not have put in a read-only mode. But at least you have the control over that, and you can unlock it, and then you can keep continuing. But if there was an attack, at that point you can contact QNAP support, or you can do further analysis of that attack, like running a ransomware protection application, the antivirus application with the software integration. So you can run all of that to clear any kind of future malware from that device, and then you can, once you're sure that everything is okay, then you can unlock the device and then start using the device. Or you can do a backup, because read-only can still allow you to copy the data out of that particular device into like a USB drive or another device, or an external source like a cloud drive or something like that. So you can actually get the data out of it because the data is still accessible. So read-only does not lock your data for yourself. You can still access it. It just cannot modify that particular data anymore. So you have these features. You can automate that everything. This is a extremely new feature that we are proud to introduce, so that at least you have the control over your device and everything is running.
I might want to say a few things of why do we have the option to disable future snapshots? Because it might ask, isn't it strange that you can set it to take a snapshot? You can also set it to disable future snapshots. But to understand about snapshots, usually snapshots don't take very much space. But when you delete files or modify files, the modified blocks end up making the snapshots take space. So if you get ransomware and all your files get encrypted, pretty soon, basically, all that data gets saved to the snapshot. Basically, every block of data that's made encrypted gets saved to the snapshot. Snapshots get really big. And what could happen is you have snapshots, but then you get ransomware. Your snapshots get so big, you're into space. And if you have smart snapshot space management enabled, you can start deleting the older snapshots, make room for the newer snapshots. What you don't want to happen is take a snapshot after you got ransomware, and your snapshot after you got ransomware takes so much space that everything's encrypted that it deletes your snapshots before you got ransomware, and now you can't recover from ransomware. So that's what you don't want to happen. Already in Smart Snapshot Space Management, you do have an option to refuse to delete the most recent snapshot, but we still under this feature here basically saying if it seems like you have ransomware, take a snapshot now, right away, but also don't take future snapshots because taking snapshots after you got ransomware may not be so helpful. And we don't want your previous snapshots before you got ransomware to get deleted. So that's why there's the option to stop the scheduled snapshots after that moment. Now, of course, that won't be much of an issue. Future snapshots won't be much of an issue if the folder's already in read-only mode, but some people might want just read-only mode. Some people might want to not go in read-only mode, but just take a snapshot and disable future snapshots. It's very customizable. I feel like we can kind of skip this slide down, kind of what we said already. Something else we have is the ability to do SCD with TCG-Ruby. Now, for a while now, we've supported SCD with TCG-Opal. So basically what SCD is self-encrypting drives. So there's kind of two ways to have encryption on a QNAP. One is encrypt to share folder. We do have AES 256-bit share folder encryption for QTS Hero or volume encryption on QTS. And that's the way to basically get our NAS hardware to do the encryption. But the thing about that is there is some performance cost. It may not be a huge performance cost. It is still hardware encryption, but there's still some performance cost, and how much that cost also might depend on the hardware. If you have a weak CPU with weak hardware, cost may be more. We have some really beefier CPUs with great encryption hardware, cost may be less, but there's some cost. But if you have SCD, the hardware itself does the encryption, and it has little to almost no performance impact when the hard drive or SSD itself does the encryption. So in this way, you just encrypt the whole pool. The drive does the encryption, little performance cost, but you still have encryption. So there are some advantages there. And now that we support both TCG-Opal and TCG-Ruby, there are more drives that can support this feature because not every drive supports this feature on our compatibility list. You can filter by different features. You can see, okay, which drives are supported for SCD, but you now have more options since there's both the Opal drives and the Ruby drives supported for this feature. So something else that I think is really neat, we are going to demo this, so I'll try to be brief here, is we can back up system settings. We've always had the option to back up system settings for as long as I've been at QNAP, but we can now back up more and more customizable. So the ability to back up, so right now to back up more user information, networking information, keep track of which applications you have and how to restore those applications when you go to new NAS, privilege settings. There's so much more that can be backed up that when you restore, you have much more optimization. You can say, okay, back up the user information, but don't back up the network information, or back up the network information, but don't back up, but don't re-download all the apps, or re-download most of the apps, but skip these apps. It's very customizable, and we're going to demo this, so I won't take too much time now, but I find this pretty, I think that's pretty neat what this can do now, especially when you want to go from one NAS to the other NAS, how quickly you can get up and running like you were before with settings like you had before, and the customization. I think you'll see how cool this is when we actually show it. And so yeah, so keep track of installed apps is what I was mentioning. Where we're going to show that when you actually back up the settings and restore from system settings, it keeps track of your installed apps. But the other thing is faster startup and shutdown times. So increased by about 50%. So I mean, for a while, people have been expressing the desire for us to have a faster startup time. I feel like our startup time, it shouldn't be a big deal because you typically don't start up or shut down that often, but still people have been expressing that they want this to be faster. And so we have worked to make this faster. Yeah. And this is a feature, it's not specifically only available in 5.2, but it's now available. So we want to really push it now on 5.2 is that we can back up your PC system images. So for a while, we've had Hyper Data Protector to back up VMware and Hyper-V VMs, back up with versionings, no licensing costs, great for VMware and Hyper-V. However, what we added is also the ability to back up your system image on Windows PCs. So we have a Netback PC Agent runs on their PC, integrates with Hyper Data Protector. And so this feature is working pretty well now. So now on 5.2, we want to really draw attention to this feature because it's working pretty well and it's available. And it's a great way to back up your Office PCs. We also support time machine backups as well. So basically back up your PC, back up your Macs. We have versioning. We can create a boot disk to restore it to a different PC, or you can just restore your files or volume to the same PC. It's up to you.
All right, so that's it. So we can now jump into our demo section. So, all right, so before we jump into our demo section, we do have a few questions that I would like to answer. 1 second. So, all right, so all right, so first question is that, does SMB encryption is also included? Yes, SMB encryption is also included with the new version. So you can still do SMB encryption. Another question is that, is the drive encrypted with SED or is the SMB connections to the client encrypted? It's actually two different things that you're referring to right here. SED drives are just drive encrypted when creating a new storage pool. And I'll show you that shortly. Is you creating a whole storage pool, which is encrypted storage pool, and that is encrypting the whole NAS basically. And then the SMB encryption is just connection to the client that is encrypted. So you can actually do both. You can actually set up as SED encryption and you can do the SMB, because SMB connection on the new version is already encrypted. So you can set up encryption on the SMB connection while you can set up SED encryption. So SED encryption basically just adds encrypted level to the whole NAS, and then just SMB encryption is just Samba encryption that is set up when using the device between the QNAP device and the Windows machine or whichever machine or Mac machine or whichever machine that you're accessing from. So those are two different things I wanted to refer to. Another question we had before we started the webinar is the new features available for the QTS Hero and QTS regular operating system. Yes, both features are included for both the OSs. So whatever feature you're looking at will be included in both versions of the operating system. And then we had a question before we started the webinar, is that is the 464 a compatible system? The 464 is actually compatible with QTS 5.2 already. You can now download the new version, but we would like to take this opportunity to actually let everyone know that the TS64 series, or the 464, 264, and 664 will now be compatible with our QTS Hero operating system starting sometime in September. So in September, you can actually switch the operating system from the QTS into QTS Hero operating system. But the only issue with that is that if you have an existing data, you just have to ensure that you can back it up, because you cannot move data between the old operating system, because it's completely different file systems. You have to, it will reinitialize the whole drives and then to set up the new operating system. But the TS264, the TS464, and the TS664 will now be compatible with the QTS Hero, the ZFS-based operating system, starting sometime in next month. All right, so with that in mind, let's get started with our demos. So the first demo I wanted to show you quickly is the SED drive encryption. So I have logged into a QNAP 664 QNAP 664 NAS which has two M.2 drives, and those are SED drives. So these are SED drives. You can see right here. It's an unlock status. It's a TCG Opal drives. And then once it's plugged in, as I mentioned, you can create an SED pool, and you can see right here, I already have the pool created. So you can now click on it, manage it. Now remember, the storage pool will have all your data, right? If it's a Hero operating system, you will have all your shared folders, all your iSCSI LUNs, yeah. So you can encrypt either just the shared folder or the shared LUN, right? Those were already available, but the SED pool actually brings the encryption level directly onto the storage pool. So onto the drive level. So when you create the whole initial storage pool, that's when the data or the storage pool is encrypted, or data is encrypted, right? So you can now have the ability to lock the whole storage pool. So if you go to actions and click on SED settings, you can actually change the password, you can lock it, or you can disable it if you like to. So once you lock it, it will, as I mentioned, you can see the message right here. All the connections will be dropped, and if auto lock will be disabled, so if the NAS reboots and the device will be locked, you have to actually log into the device to be able to unlock the volume. So that's also something that is not available. If you don't have SED drives, traditionally, if you create a volume, that's where you set up your encryption, right? So if you go here and if you click on encryption on the QTS platform, on the QTS Hero, you go to control panel, you go to shared folder, and then you create a new shared folder, and this is where you can set up encryption, right? That's folder level encryption or volume level encryption. But with the SED drives, when you create the initial storage pool, that's where the encryption will be available. So you can actually lock the whole storage pool, and all the volumes, all the data within that storage pool will be locked, and then no one will have access to the data. One more thing to also note is that because the applications that you have installed on your NAS is also installed onto the storage pool or the volume, those will be locked as well. So you have like applications like backup, like hybrid backup sync or hybrid data protector or Plex application. All of that will be locked as well, and you will have to unlock the device to be able to access the SED storage pool. So that's something you can also have to make sure that you understand before you start setting up the SED storage pool or SED drives. Okay. So that's the SED volume. So I'll also show you how to set this up, but that will take a little bit while, so we can put that shortly. But I'm going to continue something with the next setup, which is the backup and restore, the new backup and restore setup, right? So on the control panel, if you go to backup and restore, and you can now enable something that was a lot of people requested, is to schedule backup. So if you change a lot of settings, like add a lot of users, delete them, or change a lot of settings on your NAS, you want to ensure that you have the scheduled backups. You have different versions of the backup of your NAS. So you can now schedule this. You can set up a daily time, weekly time, or monthly. So every month, every day, or every week, you will have a new backup of your configuration. You can also encrypt this backup so you can know, so nobody can access it, or nobody can just take the backup and restore it to another device unless they have a username, unless they have a password of the encrypted backup, right? So that's something you can also do now with the new version 5.2. Now, you can also download this to your computer, and once you download the backups, all of these new settings will now be available to backup, right? All of this will be backed to your device. As I mentioned, the system settings like general settings, hardware, firmware information, NFS information, Samba settings, all of that settings will now be backed up. It will also back up your privilege like users group, admin information, shared folder data, not the data, but just the folder information and the quota information. Also network settings like virtual switches, DHCP server, if you have that set up, routing information, DDNS, and records of your installed application. So now, if you have a lot of applications installed, it will also put that information inside the backup as well, and you can encrypt all that information. Once you back this up, the QNAP, when you back it up, it will be like a bin file. So your computer will always think that it's not a secure file. That's okay. You just click on keep and it will back up that information. Now, that's just backup, right? Now, let's see how the restore app setup works. Now, let's say if you want to restore an old backup information, you can just click on restore. Now, if you're doing a scheduled backup, you can select where the folder. So I think I didn't show you that, but let's say if you do a backup schedule, you need to select the destination folder on your NAS. So it could be a public folder that your backups will go to. So you can schedule that. Now, when you do a restore and you're doing a scheduled backup, you have to select the data. Sorry, that's not it. You can select which folder you want to that your backups are stored into on the NAS, and you can restore. This is all the NAS data, right? NAS folders. So it's not your computer folder, it's the NAS folder. So you can select which folder the backups are stored into, and then you can just select that backup file, and that's it. You can restore from there. Or if you just restoring it from your data from a file on the computer, you can just click on browse, and then right here, let's see where my files are. Oh, right here. Now, this is the bin file that was downloaded on my computer. Now click on next. Now it will see your backup file and will now start to ask you what you want to restore. So do you want to restore your settings, like your network settings, your server settings? If you don't want to restore this, you can skip this. Now you have the ability to skip it. You don't need to restore everything. You can now choose what you want to restore. So you can skip, or if you want to restore just the steps, network settings and all that, you can select next. So it will restore that, or you can skip it. Now you can keep the current user information, or you can, if you forgot your information for your username and password, you can now select a new username and password. So now when you restore, you will have a new username and password to restore. Or if you don't want to restore your users, you can skip that and click on yes, and then you can. Now, for your network, you can have to check your IP conflict, right? You have to ensure that if you have another device with the same IP address, you don't want to restore that, it will create an issue now. So you can now check for IP conflict, and you can select next if it's no IP conflict, or if you have an IP conflict, you have to select the new IP address for the restored device. And now you can set up, you can also check, or you can also select which apps you want to restore. If it's an older version, you have the ability to update that app into that on the device as well. So, and if you already have the application, we'll just say keep the current version. We don't want to restore this, anything like that, and just click next. And now you have the summary. You select, it will show you what do you want to restore, and you click on restore, and we'll start restoring what you select. So that's a new important feature that we have introduced.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this makes it much more convenient for when you do a system migration. If you've already backed up and restored, maybe schedule a backup, and maybe schedule backup to your folder and sync that folder to another NAS or to your QSync folder to your computer. But once you have that backup, system migration is easier, upgrading to a new NAS is easier, and I think this is a great feature here.
All right, so next, we're going to look at the SMB Multi Channel, right? The new feature. This feature was already introduced, so I'm not going to dive deep into that, but I'm going to still show you the performance and enhancement you can get those. So as Daniel mentioned, the new SMB multi-channel features. I mean, SMB multi-channel, again, is for users who have multiple network ports that are not being used, right? QNAP always offers, on at least most of his devices, QNAP offers multiple network port. It could be two 10 gig port, it could be two 2.5G port, or 2 1G port. it will have multiple network ports. And if you have a switch on your device, on your network, and you have additional ports available, why don't you connect both both network ports on the QNAP into the switch, and you can enable multi-channel. This enables, so if you're using the NAS with a lot of multi-channel, like for a lot of Samba connections, like just like video editing or just copying data between computers using Samba connections, or it's just using it as file server or backup server. Having multiple connections just enables the QNAP and the switch to work together to distribute the data between both the network ports. So now it could potentially double the speeds of your device. The only thing you have to remember is that you have to make sure that either if the computer has multiple network ports as well, then both computer and the QNAP will be able to work together to give you double the speeds. Or if you have the computer with single network port, usually that won't make much of a difference. But if you have multiple computers that's transferring data between the QNAP and the NAS, it can use SMB Multi Channel to be able to offload that information and use both connections together. So all you have to do on the QNAP is to enable multi-channel here, and then ensure that nobody's transferring data onto the QNAP device while you're using this feature. And then under SMB multi-channel features, if you want to you can automatically select where every adapter is now enabled for multi-channel, or if you want to manually select only two adapters. I have two 2.5G adapters that I'm using, so I'm only enabling that and apply, and now SMB multi-channel is now enabled for those two adapters. Click apply, and that will enable the SMB multi-channel. So let me show you my Mac's settings right here as well. So on my Mac, I have two 2.5G adapters connected to the same network switch that the NAS is connected to. So right here, if you look at my network and virtual switch, you can see two 2.5G connections going into a QNAP 2.5G switch. And the Mac is also using the similar setup as well. So 4 cables connected to the same switch from the device. Now, let me open up Resource Monitor as well, so we can see what's going on here as well. So right here, you can see my both network adapters being used. So that being enabled. So I'm gonna mount a SMB share from my NAS into the QNAP device. I'm gonna also open up terminal. Okay, so give me 1 second, okay? So on the Mac as well, you can run this command SMB util space at a multi-channel -A. This will show you your connection and if it's active or not, the session. So I have 2 cables connected and both are active sessions right here. This is the QNAP IP addresses. So both are using SMB multi-channel. So now if I start transferring data between the QNAP and my Mac, you can see right here, it should be using about 500 megabytes of seconds. This is using two 2.5G connections between my Mac and the computer. So you can see both the adapters are now transferring data between my Mac computer and the QNAP device. You can see almost 2.5G switches able to hit with the device. And this is just by connecting 2 cables. That's all I have to do. So now the other advantage is, let's say if you have an issue with one of the cables, if you disconnect one of the cables, will keep going. So I have one cable that I disconnected. So if you look at my settings right here, one of my see, it's only one cable connected. The other one, which was connected with the 2.5G adapter, is disconnected. So now the data transfer will still keep going, but it's half the speed. It's only using one connection now, which is this adapter 1. So that's the other advantage of SMB multi-channel, right? Your connection does not get lost. Everything will still keep working. This is like a backup of your Samba connection. So if your switch has a port issue or a cable issue, or the connection will still keep going, your application will still keep running. So once the connection comes back alive, like if I replug the cable on my computer, now the adapter is now connected. It should be able to now go back and restart both the connections as well to be able to now write to the device using SMB multi-channel. Yep, right here. So you can see now it's using both connections again. So you can see it's using both the connections again. We're using SMB multi-channel by just reconnecting the cable that I had disconnected. So that's another feature with SMB multi-channel that you can actually use with the QNAP device. So you don't have to worry about if the cable disconnects. So it's like a backup feature, right? It's like a redundant connection that you can set up. But remember, the only major question remains is that it's only for Samba connection. This is not like port trunking, where the whole QNAP NAS is redundancy or performance enhancement for iSCSI, for NFS. No, it's not like that. It's only for Samba connections, because a lot of people get confused with the feature we already have called port trunking, that you can have on the QNAP device. So it's not like port trunking where you can set up two connections to be able to use simultaneously for iSCSI, for NFS, for the whole QNAP device. No, it's not for port trunking. It's only for Samba connections. But the advantage of the Samba connection is that you don't require a special switch. You don't require special connections, because port trunking requires a special switch that supports 802.3 AD, right? But no, with Samba SMB multi-channel, you can set up SMB multi-channel even with the dumb switch. If it's a switch, it's just a regular switch with no managed connections. You can just connect the cables, ensure that your QNAP NAS is on the latest version, the computer is on the latest version, and it supports Mac, Windows, Linux, all of that. New versions all support multi-channel, and that's it. You just have to connect the cables and start using this new feature. So that's another major advantage. No setup needed. All you have to do is go on the control panel, go to Win Mac and NFS, enable this checkbox, and apply. That's all you have to do to enable this particular feature, and also again, connect the cables. So if you have spare ports on the computer, if you have spare ports on the NAS, have them connect to the switch. And then I would recommend, if you can get a 2.5G switch with multiple ports, you can connect both cables, because remember, most of the QNAP comes with multiple network connections. Even if you have an older QNAP, which is a 1G QNAP or 1G port, most of the QNAP again has two 1G ports. Why don't you connect both the cables to a switch? And if you can get an adapter, an additional adapter for your computer, like a USB adapter or a Thunderbolt adapter, and connect that and as an additional port on the computer, that's it. QNAP also now is we actually sell our own. So if you have a PC that is PCI compatible or can accept cards, we have accessories now available for the computers. So you can get like a 225G, dual 25G port, dual 10G port, or even a dual 5G port or 2.5G ports, like dual ports, or even quad ports as well. And you can upgrade your computer with our network cards. And again, dual ports, so you can connect both cables to the switch, and then both cables of the NAS to the switch as well. And then again, we also have our own line of network switches as well that you can use, like the 2.5G switches that we have, that you can connect. So it's multi-port switch that you can actually use, and you can connect them together. Again, it doesn't have to be managed switch. You can get something like unmanaged switch like this one, and they can still use all of this feature, the SMB multi-channel feature. So again, that's just a short like reintroduction for SMB multi-channel.
I don't have too much more to say, but just that since we now in kernel mode have better parallel processing, it should help the multi-channel feature work even better.
Perfect. So the another feature and the last feature I wanted to talk about for today would be our the Hyper Data Protector application. It's a free application that you can download from our NAS for your. So now again, this feature was requested a lot by our users. We never actually had a true bare level or bare metal backups for the QNAP device. So it's like a bare metal backup for your Windows machines now. So Hyper Data Protector is a new it's actually an existing application. We just upgraded to version 2.0, which allows you to now back up your Windows computers into your QNAP device, and it's a bare metal backup. So the whole machine will be backed up at a system level. So if you lose the whole machine, you can restore the whole machine into another computer, or if you replace the hard drive in the existing machine, you can just restore the whole machine back into the existing machine as well. Before, and the system still supports VMware and Hyper-V backup, license-free backups as well. But this is our new feature that you can set up on the QNAP device, which is the Windows Server and Windows PC and server backups. And so I'm running 2 computers, which is backing up to this particular machine. So on the Windows machines, you can see right here, it's a VM that I'm running on my Windows computer. So it's backing up right now, but I can access my data as well into the QNAP device. So you can set up schedules right here. Let me actually set up a new machine with the Windows backup, right? So let me access another machine. So once you install the application, you can open the application. And then you can go to Windows and Server. Now you can click on Add Inventory and click on Windows and PC Server. You need to download an application on your computer, which is called Netback PC Agent. Now this is the application. You can actually download it from a website as well directly, but I'm just going to show you how to download it on the computer. This is the agent needs to be running on the Windows machines to be able to back it up. So I'm going to go through the setup. Just go to the regular setup. There's nothing much on the setup part of it, at least. So while this is installing, let's go back and look at some questions. So the question we have is the boot time is definitely better, much better. Still using the beta version. Thumbs up for the system startup. So thank you for the feedback. So now the 5.2 is no longer beta. It's actually a release version. So if you're still on beta, just check for the new firmware, and then you can upgrade to the new firmware. It's now a release version. So it's no longer beta version, it's the release version. So ensure that you upgrade all your devices to the new version. And so it's since this is a release version. The boot up time, thank you for the feedback, but the boot up time is again for people who are actually using this because at my home, for example, at my home, I actually have set up something called I forgot, power schedule. Spacing out right here. So power schedule allows you to actually shut down the device or automatically schedules your startup and shutdown on daily basis, weekly basis, or weekend basis as well. So if you're not using the device a lot, like especially at nighttime, if you want to save some, the QNAP does save a lot of energy by going into sleep mode by putting the hard disk into sleep mode automatically. There's no activity for 30 minutes, but you can go ahead and actually go a step further. You can schedule your devices to turn off. So my QNAP device will now So I have a setup on my schedule every night at around 11:30. Oh, actually, it's 24-hour clock. So 11:30, I set up my NAS to now actually it's on a weekday. So on weekdays at 11:30, my NAS will shut down, and I will actually turn on the server on the weekdays around 8 in the morning. So from 11:30 at night until 8 in the morning, the QNAP will be off. So I'm actually saving additional energy onto my device as well. So and then you can set up another schedule on my weekends. I actually ask the QNAP to shut down at like around midnight. But actually, oh wait, no, it's actually 2 in the morning. Sometimes I watch movies late at night and I need my NAS, so it's shut down at 2 in the morning, and then I can turn it back on the weekend. I wake up late, so I turn it on around like 10 in the morning. So from 2 in the morning until 10 in the morning, the QNAP NAS will be turned off. So you can set this schedule up. Now, the new feature is the boot up time. So for me now, I can see the benefits of the boot up time because now every day, because my NAS reboots every single day, right? So every single day, now the time it takes for boot up is now cut in half almost. So that's another feature that that I wanted to talk about as well, including the new. So people who restart the devices a lot, that's another feature for that device. Now so now the application let's go back to Hyper Data Protector. So now I'm gonna schedule the backups, right? So now I have to enter the IP address for my NAS where the backups will be going into. Oh, first, I'm sorry, I missed this step. So first, before you can start the backup, I need to set up a folder where the backups will be going into. So on my computer, I'm gonna create a new shared folder called Windows Backup. And then you can name it anything you want it to, right? So it's not up to you can name it anything you want it to. And because these are backup, I don't want to put it in my SSD drive. I'm gonna put it in my regular hard drive, right? And I can set up like I just need 1 terabyte of space on my device for these backups, and then I can hit next. Actually, I'll leave it at thin provisioning. Let's just because it's not performance intensive, so just leave it at thin provisioning. Hit next. The default settings should be perfect for this. Hit next, and I can enable and I can put in who has access to that. So it's only I want to have access to my device on that folder. So I just keep the next, and nothing here on the properties, and hit next and finish. Okay. So now the folder is created. I need to add that folder as an inventory. So for that particular, no, sorry, inventory is where the repository on my Hyper Data Protector. That's where the backups will be going. So I'm gonna rename it same as my folder. And select the folder I just created right here. Hit add. So so repository is where all your backups will be going, and you can have one repository for all your Windows computer, or you can have different repository for different purposes as well. So and you can select that. So I have a home lab at my home, right? So I'm running a VMware server. I'm also running multiple Windows computers. So my home computer actually has multiple repositories. One for VMware, because this application can also allow you to back up your VMware for free as well. All my VMs inside the VMware can be backed up for free, so I don't have to pay a third-party application just to back up my VMs. And because it's license free, it's all free for me. So I have a repository for my VM backups, and I have another repository for my Windows machine backups, just to keep everything separate. So once you have a repository created, you go back to the application, enter the IP address for your NAS, enter the username password, It's going to ask for SSL certification, but since it's local connection, I don't really care. I'm going to continue anyway. And it's going to create the inventory. So it's going to add the Windows machine as a backup repository into the application. So now I'm going to be able to select which volumes. So if you have a lot of local like C drive, D drive, E drive, or a lot of different drives, you can ask the QNAP to back up either all drives, or you can select a certain backups only. So I'm going to select all drives. I'm going to select my NAS as my destination, and I'm going to select that new repository that I just created. Hit next. Now you can set up a schedule, so you can ask the QNAP to do a backup of my computer every single day at midnight. Or you can also trigger something like system log or log out. If you log out or if you lock your system, it will back up your data. So if you keep your system on, but you lock your system, you want to trigger a backup, you can set that up as well. Hit next. And now you can also set up versioning as well, because this is a free application. You can actually, and if you have a lot of space on your NAS, you can actually have multiple versions of your backup. So you can select which version you want to restore from, or you can actually select which file from that backup you want to restore onto the QNAP device. So I'm going to select the number of versions or number of days you want to go back in time to restore. Hit next. If you want to encrypt your backups, or you can set up compression as well, and what you want to do after the backup is completed, turn off the system or keep it running. Or you can also select, if you have multiple network ports connected, you can select which port, so your backups does not take a lot of data space from your main network. So you can also select that as well. Hit next, hit create. Once it starts creating the inventory, it will, now you can see the application, and then you can start the backup jobs. All right, so once it's created the inventory, I can click on backup now, and if it's going to queue up backup, if there's no other backups running, it will start the backup jobs immediately. Or if there's another backup job running, it will wait to finish that backup job, and it'll start your backup job after that. Remember, all this feature is available for free. You don't have to pay any licensing fee. So if you're paying a licensing fee to another software manufacturer like Acronis or any other backup software features, you can now use this to do your new backups and then stop paying any subscription to those software manufacturers. Because again, if you have a NAS, why not use the full capabilities of the NAS device and use all the features that we have available for this particular device. Under overview, you can see your schedules. You can also create a USB boot drive. So this allows you to plug in a USB drive onto the computer and click on create a new boot drive. This allows you to create and then hit next. I don't have a USB drive, so it won't allow me to create this. So this allows me to create a boot drive. So let's say if my whole computer just died, like the whole hard drive died, the SSD drive died, and I need to restore the whole computer. All I have to do is create a boot drive, and I can just go, and again, the feature does not have to be on this computer. You can go to another computer, install this application, and just create a new boot drive on that computer. So I can just go to another computer, create a boot drive, come back, plug into the computer on this machine, and boot up from that particular device, and it will connect. Once it boots up to the USB drive, it will connect to that device using the network, and you can restore the whole machine back into the QNAP device or back into the Windows machine. That's all features now available using the Hyper Data Protector application. Again, this is a free application. You can install this onto your QNAP device right now. All right, so let this finish. I can show you one feature that's after that. But in the meantime, we'll continue with the Q&A. This is the last demo, so you can start asking all the questions that you need answers for. But there's already questions that are posted already, so we can start answering that questions. Seeing the boot time, the next feature is with SCD encrypted shared folders, backup will also be encrypted or not. With SCD encrypted volumes shared folder, backup will also be encrypted or not.
So SCD drives are for encrypting pools, So you're not encrypting at the volume level, you're encrypting at the pool level. So if your NAS has an encrypted pool, but you back up to another NAS that does not have an encrypted pool, then your backup's not encrypted. If you back up to another NAS with an encrypted pool, then you have a backup on an encrypted pool. So if someone stole those drives, they would not be able to access your backup.
But to make it simple, yeah, if the drive is encrypted, you don't need to create a shared folder on that device to be encrypted because the drive is encrypted. So you'd have to create a shared folder, which is encrypted shared folder because the folder will be sitting under the encrypted drives itself.
Yeah. SED encrypts at the pool level. So that's different than shared folder encryption.
Right. Is it possible to use two-factor authentication for SMB connections? No, right now SMB connection does not support two-factor authentication. So I'll have that. I'll actually look into this and see if I can request this feature. But two-factor is only available for web authentication. Like the web interface. Thank you so much for the feedback. Another question is demo NAS is with 2.5-inch SSD or NVMe. The demo NAS is actually only, so actually one of them is with 2.5-inch drives, NVMe drives, and regular SATA hard drives. In the other demo, the 664 is only with the one with SCD drives and only with the NVMe drives. Another question is Hyper Data Protector. If you're running your OS on a separate SSD, can you back it up and then replace your SSD and restore the new SSD? Yeah, you can just, yeah, if you have, yeah, you can select which volume you want to back up. So you can select the main volume and you can just back up that. All of that will still work. Yes. Another question is not with Hyper Data Protector, with Hyper Backup. I'm pretty sure you mentioned Hyper Backup Sync. For example, when I back up data on an external drive or devices or cloud, does the SCD encryption goes with the backup? No. So because the SCD drives remain as on the NAS itself, it does not back up to your destination. When you on the hybrid backup thing, when you create a new backup job, you have the ability to encrypt that backup job when it goes to the cloud or goes to the external drive. So you have to ensure that you use that feature to ensure that your backups are encrypted. But SCD drive would not back up the destination device data. All right, so we'll wait for a few more questions. I think the backup is finished. So let's look at, I'm gonna do another backup just quickly, and then look at the application itself. So we have multiple versions of the backup. I'm hoping that this will finish quickly because since there's nothing new to backup, because again, these are incremental backups. So every time it does a new backup, it's gonna wait, it's gonna see what's data has been changed, and it will do the new backup. Another question, enabling SMB daemon in kernel mode disables any SMB encryption write-only access. Yeah.
That might be true, actually.
We'll have to check on that. I'm gonna put in my email address. Usman, can you send me an email?
Yeah, there is.
And we can reconfirm on that question.
I didn't even look. Enabling kernel mode SMB Daemon will disable SMB encryption.
So yes, so we are able to confirm that. So if enabling kernel mode will disable encryption.
But that's SMB encryption, so you can still have SCD drives for encrypted pools. You can still have encrypted shared folders. It's just the SMB encryption that would be disabled.
Any other questions? All right. So last feature I'm going to show you with Hybrid Data Protector is Backup Explorer. Now, when you access the device, I'm having some. Let's see if I can. Perfect. I think this. Give me 1 second. It seems that the VM is having an issue right now. But if you don't want to back up the whole computer, but you just want to restore a certain file, you can click on Backup Explorer. It will open up a web browser with showing you all the files available that's been backed up into the QNAP, and then you can restore a certain file onto using that particular data. So I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the other VM was having an issue, but this VM, so if you go to Backup Explorer, I have 2 versions of the VM backed up. So I can select which version. I can start accessing data from that particular VM. Like if you go to Users, Windows, I can access my documents data. I can just restore a certain file that I wanted to restore instead of backing up instead of restoring the whole computer. If you just require one file from the backup, you can just go to a Backup Explorer and be able to restore or download that one particular file that is missing from your device that you can back up. Or if you want to compare the original copy with the backup copy with the current copy, you can also do that as well. So that's another feature that I wanted to show you before we stop before we conclude this particular demo. So actually, that is it from our end. We'll stay on the meeting for at least 2 more minutes if you guys have any further questions. Other than that, thank you all for joining our webinar. We host webinars monthly, so please be lookout for another webinar next month. But we'll wait for 2 more minutes for any further questions that you guys want to have us answered.
And I'm just going to reaffirm a clarification, which I kind of already said, but SMB encryption is not the same as share folder encryption. Share folder encryption is about encrypting the data on the share folder. Pool encryption is about encrypting the data on the drives in the pool. SMB encryption is about encrypting the data transfer through the SMB protocol. So it's the SMB encryption that won't work with kernel mode, but you can still have your data encrypted on your shared folders or have your data encrypted on your pools. You just cannot encrypt the SMB file transfer when you use SMB kernel mode. I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody.
All right, seems like no further questions. So thank you all for joining our webinar. You guys have a great day ahead today. And please, we'll send out a follow-up as well with a link to replay the video if you missed anything on this particular webinar. You can replay them as well. And then please be lookout for our next webinar for next month. And thank you all for joining. You guys have a great day.